Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Where not to store your gold and silver. Let's explore. You know, having gold and silver in your possession, that's right, when you hold it and you own it, there is still risk. You could always be burglarized, you could be robbed, there could be a catastrophic fire, or any number of situations that could occur whenever you have something in your possession. But that goes with anything in your possession. They could be destroyed or taken. But you are more likely to have more control over those items if they are on your person. So people are willing to take that risk. And that's why the adage, if you don't hold it, you don't own it, is such a common phrase utilized in this community. And I do think now more than ever that it's a good time to be able to hold your precious metals in your possession. Now, there are ways to be able to mitigate the disasters that we had talked about. In fact, one thing I do is I store precious metals in various different locations. If you have that luxury, if you have a group of friends that could store them for you, but yet you have access to them whenever you need them, or most of the time you need them, that is a very good thing. And that is something that I think is the optimal situation. That way it removes the target from your address and your location. It mitigates risk. Very few of these items that I have here stay here in this location. But there are times when you can grab them and need them whenever you want them if you have that ability. But even if you store them at a family or friend's location, you have to have the amount of trust that they are going to be reliable and that you will have access to them when you need them. That's not always the case and doesn't always work for everybody. You may have a small apartment, or you may live in an area where there's high crime and that type of thing. So you have to weigh that risk. But when you do, you have to decide where you're going to store your precious metals. And many people opt to store them, well, at a bank. And you would think if there's any place that's safe, it would be the bank. And you can rent safety deposit boxes there, and they will store them there in that location. But if you read the fine print, and actually I talked to a local bank that I've dealt with here in my area, and they said that yes, these are fairly reliable in terms of storage, but there are issues that can arise, and really there's no protections on your gold and silver for a myriad of different reasons, including fire or damage or even robbery. They essentially doesn't cover that stuff. And there are cases and have been situations where people have either lost keys or the bank themselves have gotten the boxes mixed up and contents have been taken or lost at the bank. So you are at the mercy of the establishment for which you sell these things. But I did, or store these things. I did get a email from a member of the community, Illimited Knowledge, about a story about what I would consider to be probably the most ideal place to store your precious metals outside of a bank, in a different kind of safety deposit box in Beverly Hills. And this is quite an interesting story here about an indictment. An FBI has found $1 million in cash, drugs, and guns at a Beverly Hills safety deposit box business that essentially was used by criminals. And they left a note telling owners for all the other safety deposit box owners to contact agents to get it back. So in order for those people, the innocent bystanders, to get their valuables that they had paid this company to store them back, they've got to contact the government. So the government is the key holders, and that's one of the primary reasons why we accumulate gold and silver, is to, well, essentially declare our independence from the government and its system of things. Federal agents raided an anonymous safety deposit box business in Beverly Hills, and the whole premise of this business is quite fascinating. I'll talk about that here in a moment. This is over alleged criminal activity prompting customers to call the seizures unconstitutional. It has been revealed. A newly unsealed indictment from the 9th of March alleges that U.S. private vaults and its customers were laundering money and letting drug dealers store fentanyl, guns, and cash in the boxes, and claimed the business marked itself to crooks. Agents with the FBI and Drug Enforcement Agency seized the contents of every single box on the 22nd of March after being granted a warrant, which remained sealed. During the raid, agents seized an unspecified number of weapons, as well as fentanyl, OxyContin, and a huge stacks of $100 bills sniffed out by drug dogs, the Los Angeles Times reported. One box reportedly contained a whopping $1 million in cash, according to the outlet. A sign has been taped to the front door telling customers to initiate a claim for your U.S. private vault box on the FBI's website. Wow. Talk about invasion of privacy. Please go to the following link to initiate your claim for your U.S. private vault box, the note signs. Well, at least they said please. It's very nice of them, as it's taped to the door, the glass door of this business here. And the form on the FBI's website reads, to make a claim for property stored at U.S. private vaults, Beverly Hills, California, please provide the following information. An FBI agent will contact you for additional details. Now, there you go. You store precious metals, which is your right. They're going to know about it. You got to contact the FBI. They are going to be the gatekeepers for your precious metals that you worked with your blood, sweat, and tears to be able to obtain your precious metals. You're going to have to contact them to get it out, if there is such a thing in these vaults there. Prosecutors claim that U.S. private vaults boasted that its anonymous boxes were more secure than banks from federal agencies, including to the indictment obtained by DailyMail.com, which is where this story is coming to us from. Unlike traditional bank deposit boxes, U.S. private vaults are 100% private, allowing your identity to remain completely anonymous, an advertisement for the company on YouTube claims. And that's a pretty good business model for those concerned about that type of thing. This would be the one place you would think that, hey, if I want to store, I don't have to provide my photo ID, which banks require. And they also need to provide a social security number as a requirement to rent a box from banks. And they identify their clients through an iris scan and a palm geometry scan. Now, that is quite an interesting way to do it, anonymous, because that's other identifying material, but in a different way, I guess. So according to this indictment, the company had also allegedly advertised, "We don't even want to know your name," and claimed that it did not require customer information that can be easily accessed by government agencies such as the IRS. But you're going to pay a price. $2,000 for a 10 by 10 inch box at the U.S. private rents. That's what they rent for annually. So that's over an ounce of gold a year to be able to have that kind of privacy and, quote, security. The cheapest box is $700, and it's only 3 by 5 inches. The company even allegedly used safety deposit box keys that were unmarked and unnumbered so that law enforcement could not determine that the keys unlock safety deposit boxes at USPV, U.S. private vaults, which is what the indictment reads there. Prosecutors claimed that the employees would even tip off customers if law enforcement officers were seen in the area. So there you go. How's that for a vote of confidence from this company? I would think for $2,000 a year, or even $700 a year, it's the least they could do. According to the Los Angeles Times, customers would access the business with an eye and hand scan to unlock the door. A manager at U.S. private vaults dealt marijuana and cocaine, and prosecutors allege that the business conspired with a neighboring gold business store to launder money, prosecutors claim. Now, and again, these are alleged charges, and nothing has been dealt with in court, but it could be the privacy of this is what is threatens to the government. I don't know, but obviously they did find some pretty damning evidence there. Prosecutors claim that employees at the gold business sold large amounts of jewelry for cash to a customer of the U.S. private vaults who is also a confidential informant working with law enforcement. I recommend you stay under $10,000 in cash, and then you could just do some one a day. A few days later, you could do the other, a gold business worker allegedly told an undercover DEA agent posing as a customer. If you buy less than $10,000, then there's no form. And really, my feeling is that is to prevent, people taking out large sums of cash for drug deals, and it raises the ire and suspicions of the government, when in reality it should be no business of theirs how much money you bring out and you deposit or take out of the bank. That's silly, but hey, that's the world we live in. And obviously with Bitcoin, more and more people are using that for these kind of nefarious activities because it's untraced and it is decentralized. In the indictment, the federal grand jury charged U.S. private vaults with 3 counts: conspiracy to launder money, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, and conspiracy to structure transactions. Now imagine if you have your stuff stored in a safety deposit box at the bank, and you have your ID and your social security number there. If you're investigated, well, hey, the bank knows your information. They'll know, and they'll go in there and take your gold and silver if you are charged with a crime, especially if it's a drug crime or what have you. In fact, that's one of the things with drug crimes. To a point, they will take and seize your assets, which I think is grossly unfair and I believe unconstitutional search and seizure. So if the bank has that information, it'll make it very, very easy for them. But as we'll find out in this story, well, this privacy stuff the U.S. private vaults had done, this did not work out for them very well, and for everybody involved in this case. It hurt everybody that was storing their stuff, storing their items and personal possessions there. The indictment did not name any of the people believed to be behind the illegal activity, and it is not immediately clear if they would independently face criminal charges. The Los Angeles Times reported that the legality of the seizure has already sparked a contentious court battle. I imagine so, because they had no way to be able to tell which items were inside that were illegal, because everybody was anonymous. So they had to close the whole store down. The whole operation was locked out to any and everybody. So every person that had stuff stored in there was a victim of this search and seizure. One customer has already claimed that the feds overreached by confiscating the belongings in every single security box, according to court filings obtained by the outlet. The customer, listed as John Doe, what a unique name, has claimed that law enforcement seized the contents of the boxes, all of the boxes, without showing why it suspected each person of committing crimes, and has alleged that the search of hundreds of boxes was unconstitutional. You think? I think that's a no-brainer there. And so there you go. That is one of the lessons that we can learn from this particular case, and how if you store your stuff at a safety deposit box in a bank, you're even more open for this Fourth Amendment violation. And so I would encourage you to think about storing your gold and silver. Now, there are ways to store gold and silver outside of this system entirely. We have secure vaults. From a lot of these bullion dealers will have secure vaults that you can store your precious metals in. But people are wary about that too, because it can be hundreds of miles away. And there are storage fees involved, and who knows? What if there is illegal activity at the bullion dealer? Unlikely, but if there could always be the case where, hey, they possess and seize assets especially if a tolving type of situation happens again with a bullion dealer, where tolving was a company that overstretched itself and went bankrupt and probably seized a lot of these assets. And more likely, if they have gold and silver stored, that will go first and be sold to meet the obligations of the falling business, which means that you're out of your gold and silver that you have stored there. But you have to weigh that for yourself, the risks and rewards of storing in an off-site account of that nature. But one thing is for sure, I believe now more than ever, especially after reading this story, that a safety deposit box at the bank is risky, and probably too risky for me anyway. But I would say for anybody else to think long and hard before you decide to store in a safety deposit box. And it would have to be an extenuating circumstance at your home where you weigh the risk of storing it at home, and you may feel that it may be a better situation to store it at a bank, but understand the risk involved there. But I would say that one of these anonymous storage places like what we saw there, the idea sounds great on the surface because it's anonymous, but then if we could have a situation where if one or two people are acting illegally and arising suspicion from authorities, everybody is going to suffer with a Fourth Amendment search and seizure violation. So there you have it, where not to store your gold and silver. Let me know your thoughts on this situation and story. And thanks again to Ill Limited Knowledge for sharing it with me. And I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video. How do you store your precious metals? Let me know in the comment section below. And a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch. And encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.